where we discuss the unidentified, the unexplainable, paranormal, conspiracies, and much more. Starring your hosts and co-hosts, Jenny Nicasio, Sean Kelly, Trish Moe, and Jason Sledgehammer Ryan Petro. Brought to you by UPRN Network. Now for your host, Jenny Nicasio.
Good evening and welcome to Chasing Prophecy on the UPRN Radio Network. FM 105.3 in New Orleans, where we discuss anything and everything beyond the scope of normal. Remember to like us on YouTube and Facebook. And make sure you email us, okay? chasingprophecyradio@gmail.com. I got to get that right, Trish. But I'm Jenny Nicasio, along with my co-host, John Kelly. Jason Ian Petro is not with us tonight, and Trish Moe. How you doing, guys?
I'm doing great. I wanted to tell you girls something. I'm a thorn in between two roses. How do you like that? How do you like that, guy?
That's nice. That's nice. I like it. That's like...
Hey, you got your green screen to work.
Yes, yeah, he did.
I know.
He did. Mine's looking like it's off. Here we go. We move it. Well, I'm channeling my Beth on Yellowstone. I know you guys know all about Yellowstone.
Just only from you.
Only from me.
Only from
find
you.
Out that's stupid. I don't know why that's doing that. I got to move over. Is that... You see that?
Yeah,
it's like a demon in here. Is yours doing that too?
I mean, I don't have one, but when I put it up, it does that.
I don't know why it's doing it. I'm going to have to... Oh, my God. Listen to this. Are you guys ready for tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we got a upcoming investigation I'd like to talk about real quick.
Sure.
We were going to the Buxton Inn down in Glanville, Ohio, and I am really, really looking forward to it. They gave us 3 rooms, and we're going to be helping a lot of people down there. Whoever's going to come on, we're going to give investigations to people, their clients or whatever, whoever's staying there for a couple hours, and it's going to be fun. And then after that, then we get to run to the whole place. So,
and is that when is that? This
Saturday.
This Saturday.
Yes.
Yeah, we're just a little bit worried about the snow.
The snow, yeah. From here, it's supposed to snow pretty bad on Friday. That's what I hear, but I hope not.
You should go live on Facebook at some point.
That's what I told them to do.
We can see you.
Oh yeah, we'll get you there.
We did that a lot in the past. We did a lot of Facebook. There were some really good ones at the Blair House, huh?
Yes, there were.
Very good.
What I like about that going down there this time is that we're only bringing 4 people to make life a little bit easier. Because
who's all going?
Me, Jason, Russ, and Val.
No Augie?
No, that's in February and March. See, we're going to be down there in February and in March. So the 4 of us, we're going down to see how this is going to work out. And
it should work out good.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it works out for you.
And we'll do a Facebook Live. We'll tell you all.
Yeah. Well, we have a really cool show for you guys tonight. Tonight, we are going to dive into one of our favorite topics, Bigfoot. The Appalachians are an ancient and mysterious mountain range whose peaks are at one time reveled by the Himalayas. The mysteries of these mountains have been cataloged by Native Americans, settlers alike. And one of these mysteries is Bigfoot in the Appalachians. And our special guest tonight, he has built a wild research tracking the Stone Man in West Virginia's Bigfoot, Dr. Russell Jones. He's also a certified master and naturalist, lifelong outdoorsman, and a longtime Bigfoot researcher. Yeah, that too, huh? He's put together one of the most complete examinations of these creatures and the Appalachians with the Appalachian Bigfoot. Now, I had a chance to go over the book. I think it was really well done, and I'm really impressed. And from his own field research and hours, you can tell he's put into it with interviews of some of the top and most active Bigfoot researchers across the Appalachians. Dr. Jones used a scientific approach to help shed greater light on the mystery of the Appalachian Bigfoot and give insight into the existence of these exclusive creatures. Little like what would you call them? Sort of like me, they don't go out very much. Recluse. Russ, welcome to Chasing Prophecy. Let me get you on, babe. Welcome
Hey
to Chasing
guys.
Prophecy.
Hey, Russ, how are you?
I'm doing good. I hope I'm just getting over COVID, so forgive my voice if it's a little off tonight.
No, don't worry about that. We've all been there, done that.
Yeah,
So,
tomorrow will be my first day back with patients.
wow. How did you feel?
I'm one of those 50 vitamin a day people that
Me.
works out like mad.
Holy
That thought that it would be
smokes.
really easy, and it was more challenging than I expected.
What was your regiment?
You know, I do this whole thing with the zinc and the quercetin and whole food vitamins I take. Literally, I do take around 50 vitamins a day.
Yeah, sounds like me. What kind of
And
doctor are you? Chiropractor?
chiropractor.
Okay.
Yeah. And my specialty in practice is anti-aging.
Oh, that's what I
So
mean.
a lot of my patients are just strictly work out, eat right, you know, that type of thing.
That
That bleeds
definitely.
me out.
Yeah, I took the
Well, we
you
got
did
to
exactly
start
that.
somewhere. So you would come in and you'd say, I have headaches or I have back pain or neck pain. And I'd say, I'm going to fix it. And then we're going to talk about your diet and we're going to make some changes and we're going to make you a little healthier.
Good. Exactly. That's
And
what you
then
got to do.
we go from there.
Yeah. So let me ask you, you're a chiropractor, and how in the world did you get involved with the paranormal and Bigfoot?
Because
I put
scary
them in the
people have
same.
back problems.
I put them in the same category because a lot of people believe, yeah, really, seriously. Bigfoot is like a paranormal entity. What we think it is. So so how did how did you get involved in this?
You know, I grew up in Southeast Ohio. I still have a farm in Ohio that I spend a lot of time at. And of course, I live in, you know, around outside Charleston in West Virginia. But my family was a hunting family. We had coon dogs, rabbit dogs. We hunted ginseng. We all trapped. And when I was a teenager, on New Year's Day, we had New Year's Eve, we got about 4 inches of snow. New Year's Day was a beautiful sunny day. And I'd taken a gentleman that was in the Army rabbit hunting. And we came along a hillside. And like I said, it was a beautiful sunny day, but it was really cold. And when I came along the hillside, there was a cave up above that, you know, you could be close to it and you wouldn't even know that there was anything there. But I found, to me, because I'd never heard of Bigfoot, barefoot human footprints, and whatever was in that cave had stayed there to weather that storm, I believed, and then heard me coming with the dogs and left. And I know that gentleman and I looked at the tracks for a long time, and I thought that it was, you know, some type of vagrant way back in the, you know, the wilderness areas. I mean, this county in Ohio, Benton County, only has one stoplight still. And so I went up to see if there was like a fire or if there was some type of, you know, clothes in there or something. There was nothing like that. And then later that year, I was fishing in a remote beaver dam that no one knew existed except for just my family. And it's maybe a mile and a half back through the woods. There's no path to get there or anything. And I was there with my uncle, and we were both carrying pistols because it was a very snaky place. And I was standing on the beaver dam about 40 yards from the brush on the other side, and I heard something kind of moving through the brush, and I glanced at my uncle. I saw him. We weren't talking. We were just quietly standing there. You know, he's about maybe 50 feet from me, and I saw he was looking too. I just assumed it was going to be a deer. And then the brush started shaking, and there was a screaming, very monkey-like, that went on for about 20 seconds of shaking the brush and stuff. And then all total, it lasted for about a minute. And it's funny because as soon as it stopped, we just kept fishing. You know, we weren't afraid of anything in the woods. We were raised in the woods. We were in the woods all night by ourselves with our dogs. I'd been back there literally dozens and dozens of times running turtle hooks and all these other different types of things, and just never had an experience. But then not long after that, Leonard Nimoy had a show called In Search of in the 70s.
Yeah, I remember that.
I
I saw that episode, In Search of Bigfoot, and I was suspicious. And since then, it literally has been one of the very biggest things in my life, and I've been totally consumed with it.
Yeah, I could see why.
Mhm.
I'd read every book that had been written on the subject and followed it all the way through my undergraduate and my doctor's school. And then my years in practice, I still followed it. And then I went up to a conference. Of course, I knew nobody, but Jeff Meldrum, the anthropologist, was speaking, which is interested in Bigfoot. And so I went to listen to him speak. And not long after that, I met Matt Moneymaker from the TV show Finding Bigfoot.
No.
And Matt and I hit it off, and I started doing everything for that group in Ohio and West Virginia.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
that was,
Great.
I don't know, maybe 15 years ago now.
So you actually think you saw him, or
Yeah, no, I didn't see Bigfoot. Over the course of the years now, I've had a lot of times that I believe that I've had experiences. Last year, I think that I had the sighting for the first time. And how I go about it is I keep a calendar of all the sightings that either my witnesses, and I'm at about 1,000 people now, or the reports that come in from that business, or just other people that will give me. And then I have around 40 game cameras. They used to be all the way from the ski resorts in West Virginia over into Southeast Ohio. And now I've concentrated them in certain areas. So I'm watching the game closer. And so we believe that, or I believe, I should say, that the animals can hear the cameras. There's some studies out that show they're about 30 decibels. And so even when you're using professional cameras like I am, they're $500. They're blackout cameras, so they can't be seen at night, but the animals are still looking at my cameras. So I want a picture of Bigfoot, of course. I keep trying to fool them, but what I pay attention to now is how the game is affected in the area by different things. So let's say you have 25 deer show up every single day, and you have a camera out for a year. So every day you watch the same deer, but then all of a sudden, the second week of October, you have no animals show up on your camera at all for 10 days. So then you're suspicious that there's something that's having an effect on the game in that area. You put it on your calendar, and then that may be.
still there? Do we lose him?
You.
Shoot.
Damn.
Shoot.
That's interesting.
So
What he was.
animals detect
Lost you there for a minute.
There we go.
frequencies on cameras.
Go ahead, Trish. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just saying animals, I mean, any animals, but a lot of, bats, and I know like dolphins and whales and everything like that, but any animal can detect, they sense the frequency of the camera. So they're drawn to that because it has a different energy signature than the rest of the forest, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like
I'm very
a
sensitive to that stuff.
ultrasound.
So if I'm in a forest, I'm the same way. If someone, my dad had cameras on his land one time and didn't tell me where he put them, but I automatically went right to, sensed them there because it was a different signature, I guess, if that makes sense.
So there's things that you can do, like, for instance, you can build Faraday cages where you actually wire the things and you're getting rid of that. There's sheets of material that absorb electricity that some of us are using. Or you can try to use something natural that will disperse that, like a creek, and get a noisemaker there. But the reality is, it's a very rare animal, and the odds are not very good that I'm probably going to get a camera in front of one. But it's research. And so, I think that most of the people that are out there doing Bigfoot stuff, 90% of the people are just out there to have an experience. They're not really doing research on an animal. They're going out there at night and they're hitting something, or they're going to a graveyard or an edge opening and hoping that they can have something come in, and they're having an experience. They're just not doing research.
That's
and
the
so
same
largely
way
now I don't go at night unless maybe a couple times a year I'm meeting friends or something to go out. But I've just already been there with, I have a thermal, I've done the whole, things like that. I'm just interested in, getting some significant evidence.
You talk about some of the mistakes that people make using the cameras.
Yeah.
What are some of the mistakes that they do when they.
So there's some studies out last summer that some of the scientists were trying to show all the different types of primates, where the bonobos or the orangutans and some of the chimps, how they would react to game cameras. They all saw them. Some were indifferent to them, some were afraid of them, some were curious of them, but all of them, to me, it looked like that the cameras were pretty obvious too. You know, some of us are really setting these things up. Like a lot of my cameras aren't, you know, people would probably see them, but you know, a great time, you know, you may be cutting bark out of a tree and replacing, you know, something like that, trying to get it where it's not, you know, so obvious to people. But I mean, when you started to look at it, and, you know, as a master naturalist, let's say I'm studying deer and I want to know how many deer are in an area, you know, I'm putting one game camera out for about every 20 acres. So if you looked at, say, Ohio, because it's between, you know, all of us, that, you know, they have around 400,000 acres of wilderness, of woods. So you don't need to put cameras in Columbus or Cincinnati. You know, we just need to put them in the wooded area.
Uh-oh.
Here we go again. We can try to get him back.
Game cameras. And so we don't have enough cameras that be able to coordinate enough to be able to cover all the area. And of course, most of the hunters are set up that they're just going after places where deer would be or whatever that's they're interested in. But, you know, one time a primatologist was saying that, you know, well, where are you putting the game cameras? And the answer was like on flats, on ridges, on saddles, you know, along creeks, blah, blah, blah. And she said, well, you know, how do you know that they even travel there? I mean, the reality is that they may travel just on north-facing slopes 10 degrees up the slope, and that's the only place they ever go. I mean, no one really knows, but I suspect that once one of us figures out exactly how to go about doing it, then it'll be easier, and everybody will start getting pictures at that point. And there's
how many
that are out there, but
how many cameras you got set up now?
Around 40.
Around 40.
Wow, that's a lot of cameras.
That's a ton of. Are they like in the circumference or?
No, so it was spread out over about 6 hours, more or less. But what I found was that I was chasing too much. I was ambulance chasing reports. You know, there'd be a report here, a report there, and I'd be all.
A lot of reports. Yeah, he has a really bad connection today.
I don't know. Setting up 40
It's a
cameras.
Reconyx camera.
40 cameras is a lot of cameras.
That's a lot of cameras, brother.
Now, do you get the
expensive Reconyx cameras? You can get about a year and a half worth of pictures, and sometimes there's 8,000 or 9,000 pictures when I'm going through them. And so you're just sitting in front of the TV, you know, just going flip, 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 and you know, you get a lot of cool pictures. Another thing I think that's helpful is like some of the parks. Now I'm concentrating in for my own personal stuff, smaller areas and only certain parks. And so I have a relationship with all the rangers. And so I'll tell them, like 2 years ago, there was an area where people were growing pot. And so I, you know, told the rangers where it was and who it was and sent them pictures and stuff because, you know, they were on my cameras. And so then about 2 months ago, I had a couple cameras out. They were in the most remote section of Ohio. It's 3.5 miles from the nearest road. It's off trail. And in that whole length of time, there was only 2 gentlemen that passed my camera, and they were the same ones that had been growing pot previously. So I had told the ranger that, you know, hey, just a little heads up, these guys are back in here, so they're probably looking for a new spot or whatever it happens to be. And so, you know, I'll tell them, you have a lot of people deer hunting. Say I'll pick a hollow, and let's say it's Lydell Hollow, and I'll say, you know, there's nobody in Lydell Hollow at all from April until you know, October, and you had about 40 people deer hunted, and they just shot 1 doe and a small 8. And so it lets them know a lot about what's going on in the territory that they do. And over the course of time, you develop a relationship with them, and they'll give you reports. And some of them are, you know, like for instance, I was going down this road, this park road, and it's narrow. So when a car was coming, a truck was coming, I had to kind of get over. And when I got beside me, I saw it was a U.S. Forest Service truck. And so the guy and I are just talking for a minute, and he had asked me what I did. And I said, I'm a chiropractor. And he said, you think chiropractor does all the Bigfoot stuff? And I said, yeah. And he put his car in park, and he's like, well, let me tell you. And he had told me that he'd been an ecologist. He was a doctor for the U.S. Forest Service, and he had heard the wood knocks on 8 different occasions. He said, I knew that it's not something natural to nature, that was something acknowledged or whatever. I knew it was different. And we started talking about bones and things like that. And, sometimes I'll give a whole talk on where are the bones, if an animal exists, why haven't we found bones? And, but his point was that Ohio has 500,000 deer. And he's like, we find deer bones, but we don't really find as many as we should find, considering, there's 500,000 deer. You should see them all the time. And, it's just not like that. But in nature, we don't find commonly predator bones, wolverines, coyotes, mountain lions. We don't find predator bones like that.
Well, how does the structure correspond with a sighting? Like if you see something on the ground, how do you know that it's Bigfoot? Like I see all these different pictures, and there's molds, and how do you know how do they figure it's Bigfoot?
So right now there's around 400 casted prints that are out there. There's scientists like Dr. Jeff Meldrum, which is an anatomist, and he's an expert in functional anatomy for primates. So he looks at a lot of them, and there's some other scientists that's their specialty as well. And so even for me at Cairo that, has undergrad degrees in science and kinesiology, it's apparent sometimes when you're finding the tracks that, to somebody it may look like a human footprint that's large, but to me it doesn't look like that at all. I will tell you that with the internet now, it's disturbing every day on Facebook. I'm probably on 50 groups on there, and I look at the stuff that's on there, and it's horrifying to me. And I know that there's scientists that are interested in the subject, but we have citizen science that's doing the research in Bigfoot, and citizen science doesn't have a very high standard. And so it scares some people off, and you'll have all the time people that are showing footprints on there that that clearly are not.
Yeah, it can be photoshopped. How do you know it's actually? But anybody can do it. I can do it.
Yeah, you just don't know. And that's one of the hard things that's about it. I'd say inside the country in North America, there's probably 100 of us that do legitimate research, and all of us kind of know each other. So if Derek Randall says that he came up with something in the Pacific Northwest where they found the nest here last year or the year before last.
Now explain to us, like people that don't know about the nest.
Okay.
Like to explain that to them.
So a couple of years ago, there was a timber cruiser that was in an area that was thousands and thousands of acres, but it was private property and no one was allowed to be on there. And he came upon these nests that when the scientists and primatologists have been brought in now, and they most close.
They're nests that people find. Sean, you have to really read this book because he's trying to explain what the nests are. And
it's common to find, not common to find nests. I found 3 myself, and I'm out literally at least a couple times a week. So the thing is, I think that's frustrating is that there's really a lot of evidence that's been put forward. Just like recently, I think the most common thing that maybe everybody heard was the EDNA, which is one of the new forms
I was going to ask
DNA
you
that's
about
out
that.
there.
That's
so
really
TV
interesting.
That Expedition Bigfoot that was just out, they've got eDNA material which just came back from UCLA, and it came back as being they had human in there, which is pretty common because that's everywhere, but then they found primate as well, and it was interesting because it was in the chimp family is what showed up.
And that's for people who don't know what that is. That's the DNA. Why do they call it DNA?
Stands for environmental DNA. It's just been around like the last 20 years, but just in the last couple years have we started to use it. And essentially, anytime that anything in nature goes through an area, whether it's a stream or, just on a trail, skin cells are shed, or what hair particles, scat, fungus, whatever it happens to be. And you can put markers in there and find out everything that's ever been in there.
It's
Recently,
so interesting.
that might have been where that they believed that the Loch Ness Monster was really an eel, and that was from using the environmental DNA.
So they actually have DNA from this creature? Do they, or is that just speculation that they
No, they have. What they have found is they have found that genetic material in there that means that there was a primate that was in there, and it was in the chimp family. So Bigfoot would not be a monkey, and Bigfoot would not be a chimp. But of course, genetic wise, a lot of the materials are the same from, even earthworms are about 75% of what we are, so animals like that would be, a lot closer. I mean, the reality is of however Bigfoot got here, he came across the Bering Land Bridge 10 to 20,000 years ago, and he would have dispersed across the United States, and that's how everything got here. And so it makes sense consistently because the state with the most sightings are the Pacific Northwest. And of course, that's where the Bering Land Bridge is. And then we have two animals that we have fossils from, Gigantopithecus, which was in Asia. There was several million, hundreds of millions of these animals, but we have like a garbage bag full of bones from them. There's another animal that was from Africa called Paranthropus, and he looked like a Bigfoot, but was just a little smaller. But the problem, of course, with that one is you had to come all the way from from Africa through Asia to get to the United States. But those are two common ones that people would look at. And of course, we only have a very small percentage of the fossils of, all the animals, around 20%. So there's a good chance that we probably don't even have it documented of what it could possibly be. And then in terms of the United States, I mean, the Bering Land Bridge was opened 10 to 20,000 years ago, but, it takes everybody believes, in most cases, 10,000 years at least for a fossil to show up. So there may not even have been fossils here.
Sean, what are your thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts.
Go ahead.
I do have a lot of thoughts. I have like a lot of thoughts here. When I was listening to you talk, and when you are doing your research on Bigfoot, have you ever tried something different instead of doing the basic cameras? I mean, like trusting your intuition, knowing that there's something that's going to be there, that a Bigfoot could be there.
Sure.
That's my first question.
Okay.
Second question is, me and Jenny been doing this for 2 years. Okay. And we've had Bigfoot people on, we also had ufologists and stuff like that. Now, this is a two-part question. I believe that UFOs and Bigfoot have something in common going on there. I do believe that they come in from a different dimension. I would like to know what your thoughts are on that.
So, Sean, you probably saw it just kind of cycled out for me. I heard you say that you had Bigfoot people on, and then I lost you.
Oh, okay. No,
He's trying to say is in your book you talk something called woo. Is that how you say
Yes.
it? WOO, and
Yes.
that's like a portal. That's what
So,
Sean's asking. If you think
woo
is that right,
is
Sean?
Yeah.
Woo is the paranormal aspect of Bigfoot, which really didn't exist until the last, say 20 years ago. There was one person in the whole country that was really interested in that, and his name's Tom Powell. He's written a couple of great books. He's a really bright guy that's out west, and he was in the BFRO, and he would do some of the reports that were more interesting, that weren't traditional type reports. But over the course of the last 10 years, woo has really expanded in Bigfoot world.
Okay. All right.
It has expanded like it's really unbelievable. It's interesting. Like I'm interested in taking all the reports and listening to what everybody says. I'm out as much as anybody that I know in the woods since I was a little boy. I've never had anything happen to me I could not explain. But I know that people do, and it is what it is. I think that one of the things that is an issue for me with the woo aspect of Bigfoot right now is we've never had a time where people are in the woods less. They don't know what the trees are. They don't know what the animals are. They're afraid of the dark. They're afraid of snakes. They're afraid of getting lost. They are so uninformed compared to their grandparents and their great-grandparents and their great-grandparents that lived off the land and farmed and hunted and did all these things, that now we have people that they go into the woods, and if something happens that they can't explain or that nothing happens, then they attach this paranormal aspect onto something that I think that before we go to that, we should exhaust all the other things. So if you're in the woods and you're all hyped up because you're going to see Bigfoot and you're nervous about it and you're not sleeping that well and you're telling all these stories, and then you go out there and something happens, well, people will say, well, I got zapped, I got infrasound, Bigfoot shot me with infrasound, when to me it's much more realistic that they are anxious and had a normal physiological reaction that I would probably have maybe as well. But we're attaching it to a different type of thing. But once again, I understand that people have different perspectives and believe different things. It's just hasn't been my experience.
We follow David Pollock. Is that how you say his name? Pellets. He's from the Missing 411 and the Canaan Project. Do you know who I'm talking about? He goes around the world, especially to national parks, and he covers the missing people, and he records it, and he has like every area of the United States he'll have the missing people, and he believes that there's something supernatural because some of these people are in locations that there's no way they could have got to without somebody taking them, and most of these people aren't like shredded up like an animal did it. And he's saying it's a paranormal entity. And what do you think? Do you have you ever followed him, or do you know of any of the missing people at the national parks?
Yeah, David Pilates is his name.
Pilates.
Yeah, and so his first two books he written were Bigfoot books, so all of us kind of know each other. And I remember when he first started that him and I had emailed some back and forth, and I think that his, and I can't speak for David, of course, but my perspective was in the beginning that he was saying that some of these disappearances were in areas that Bigfoot exists, and maybe Bigfoot could be related to some of the disappearances. And of course, we've seen other aspects if you've watched the Missing 411 shows or read the books now. And even those, I mean, the great majority of them are probably medical type things. And when you read the books, that's what you're left with. But there's some that are certainly mysterious.
And they seem to be like near water. And you mentioned that in the book too about the water.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's certain things that, when you look back historically with settlers in Appalachia, with the Indians that are in Appalachia, the tribes that were through here, they called Bigfoot. 5 of the tribes had names for Bigfoot. And of course, they're usually related to creeks or related to high hilltops and that type of thing.
Well, you talked about also how the trees are manipulated. Well, can you explain that to us?
The what is manipulated?
The trees are manipulated.
Okay. That's what you're saying.
All different shapes.
Before I forget about it, Joe, I know you, or Sean, you asked me about the trying something different type thing. So commonly, like I use an app called OnX app. It's one that's GPS driven, so I don't have to have a cell signal when I'm in the woods. And that's how I keep track of all the stuff.
How do you spell that?
OnX, O-N with an X.
Okay.
It's really cool because you can download a map to an area you never even need the cell signal, never can get lost. It'll track you and show you where you are, and you can touch it, and it'll show you who owns the land and how to get a hold of them.
That's really good information.
And so I have, say for instance, I have toys I leave in the woods Peanut butter I leave in the woods. Nutella I live in the woods.
Yeah,
Mirrors I have in the woods. Dozens and dozens of different things in caves, on stumps, on different things, all marked. And periodically I go back and they all have pictures taken of them on my app. And I'll look and see if anything's changed, if something's altered, what I had going on.
Okay, that's cool.
Or whatever.
That's a really good device.
Yeah,
but I think that we have to constantly, you can't just go out and sit around a fire and make bacon and say that you're researching Bigfoot. So you
Bacon
have to
sounds good.
pushing the envelope all the time, trying to find out, what there is that you can do. But Jenny, what you're talking about is, the manipulation of trees,
Yeah.
tree structures. So, I think that the reality is the greater primates do manipulate trees, but not a great deal. So it seems reasonable that Bigfoot would do something like that. But if you go on Facebook tonight, there's all this garbage everywhere and all this, I call it tree litter, that everybody says, this is being pinned here and this is being pinned there. And if you ask them, you'll say, well, do you know what kind of tree that is? No, I mean, they don't know anything about the trees. I mean, if we're researching, we need to educate ourselves on what type of trees they are, what types of fungus or diseases.
Now, how are they doing it? How are they manipulating them? Like, is it some kind of a paranormal thing that they do, or
no? Like they'll supposedly break a tree off and stack them into different type of structures, and there's whole books written about, TP structures, and this structure means this, and the X structure. And,
okay, so the way they structure it means something. Like,
yeah, I mean, to me though, personally, so you don't hear historically about the pioneers and the Indians. They talk about all kinds of things with Bigfoot whistling, Bigfoot taking women, Bigfoot doing this, blah, 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 blah. But you don't hear them talking about manipulation of trees and tree structures.
That's really interesting.
And I mean, if they were doing it all the time, those people that were in the woods all the time, those Indians and everybody else, they would have been hunting them down. So I think it's fair to say that they're rare, and evidence of their passing is rare too. So I've seen, for instance, it's in the book, there's a picture of, there was four, I think it's four, it might've been three. There were sticks that were about, the size of a softball, but they were a couple feet high and they were jammed into the ground. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't something that fell, they were deliberately put there. I found it compelling, but, I couldn't prove anything, of course. And then sometimes, like that one, if I walked you there, you would think that I was trying to kill you just to get you there because it's so remote to get to that location. But, finding glyphs where, you find little patterns of sticks sitting in certain ways or whatever it happens to be, and it could be somebody that was there, deer hunting in such a remote place or something. But, it could be, a Bigfoot, a primate or something as well.
So, as the resident witch here.
The resident what?
The resident witch.
Okay.
Witch.
So there are so many different elementals in my beliefs and in my experience that create structures just like that. I mean, I see those, what everybody's calling Bigfootness, all the time. I think I posted pictures on
you did.
page of like 3 just this week in totally different locations. And so
I'd love to see those. If you can send those to me.
Well, and this is why this is all
Let me see if I can pull them
fascinating
up.
to me, because I'm like, wow, Bigfoot gets blamed for all of those. Man, there's so many other. I mean, shoot, there fairies and witches and all kinds of things could place, any type of structures for different meanings or reasons or whatever in the woods. And so that's interesting. But then I was also going to ask, you spoke of, you noticed on different, with your cameras, like it would go 10 days, with no animals. Now, also as a witch, I live by the moon cycles.
Yes.
And there's, astrological, there's so much that people don't realize that goes into planetary alignments and what phase the moon's in and all of these things, even numerology, as far as the date on a calendar. When certain interdimensional creatures are able to travel between worlds, much like the veil is thinner for me to be able to communicate with spirits or other cryptids on certain days. So have you noticed a correlation between times I guess on spottings, maybe from other people, like specific dates, that creates a pattern?
So it's interesting that you said that, because like on the East Coast, researchers will try to plan their outings in the darkness of the moon, believing that Bigfoot is more active. On my game cameras, which is kind of a side note, it keeps track of the moon phase for me. And so I just note it in my notes when I'm going through. Like every time I'm in the woods each day, or not each day, but every couple of days, when I come out, I have an iPad and I sit down and write my thoughts, not only about the weather and the moon phase and what it is and the temperature and everything else, but, whether I should not have been in the woods that day. It just didn't feel good to me. Maybe something as I age, I try to be more open-minded about things than I would have been previously. And so, for instance, two of my friends that are interested in Bigfoot, one is a psychic that's in Georgia, and she's on TV shows helping them find kids all the time and all this stuff. And then there's one that was in a book on Bigfoot, and that's how I met her. She lives out in Oregon, and her and I talk commonly on the phone or message or whatever. But I always listen to what they say too. You try to be open-minded about it. It's funny because she had told me, she's like, Russ, when you go into the woods, can you just go out there and not stomping around all over the woods where you're going and looking at your maps and thinking, she's like, you need to go into the woods and just think about, which way does it feel like that I should go today? And then when you get in there a ways, then sit down and eat a sandwich, and then leave part of your sandwich there. And, maybe a piece of fruit and move on or whatever.
Yeah,
So
I always take offerings to the
So
woods.
those are gifts that you're giving Bigfoot, like
Not just Bigfoot.
Not just Bigfoot,
just
Jen.
anybody.
It's funny.
Little fairies that fly around. Yeah.
I told her that I wanted to ask Bigfoot for a picture on my game cameras. And she's like, well, she's like, well, first of all, they're not going to give you a picture. But she's like, choose a camera and then ask for a sign around that camera. I did, and I didn't have anything happen. But I know that people have always asked me, have you had anything interesting happen relating to your cameras? And there was this one place, it's the most haunted place in Ohio, and it's called the Moonville Tunnel. And that's close to the area where I grew up, near my farm, and it's the most remote section of Ohio. So I spend a lot of time there. And back behind the tunnel, about an hour walk, is a lake back there called Demon Lake. And it's a very Bigfooty like looking place or whatever. Well, there was a cliff up high on a hillside and then a river down below. And so I was using 2 game cameras to block the whole hillside. So nothing could go by that hillside without going past a game camera. So my game cameras both turned off the second week of December on the same day. And they both turned back on the second week of April on the same day. And so when I pulled them and I saw that, then I sent them back to the manufacturer to ask them if I had an issue, and both the cameras were okay.
Boots the Cat has a question for you.
Okay.
He says he has 2 questions. Where are the most Bigfoot sightings located in the U.S.? And also, do you think Bigfoot sightings are related to the missing 411 phenomenon?
So the most common state for sightings is the state of Washington.
We lost him again.
Yeah.
Do you know Pennsylvania's ranked in the top 10 for cryptids and Bigfoots?
No.
Yeah, we are.
I knew that was cutting out. Did you guys hear those states?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. Number 1 state for sightings is Washington. Number 2 is Oregon. California is number 3. Ohio is number 4. No one ever knows why Ohio. It's kind of weird, but that's the way it is. The other ones make sense, because we were talking about earlier about the animals coming over with the Bering Strait and all that type of thing, which would make sense. Another thing that's indicative of a creature, I think, is, when you look at the size of the animals, and there's rules in nature that the farther north you go, the larger the animal. So a deer in Florida is smaller than a deer in Canada and that type of thing. And it's the same way with the footprints that we find. So the footprints on average are larger the farther north. So if people were faking everything, it would be hard for them to know and keep that in mind when they were, doing all that. But in terms of the missing 411, and I think that it's possible that, in my mind, that Bigfoot would be like humans, and we have good humans and bad humans, and humans that aren't mentally right there, and Bigfoot and other animals are probably like that too. So I'm sure that there's historically been cases where there was one that was protecting young or protecting old or hungry or whatever it happened to be. So it seems reasonable that it would happen. But I think that we've learned over the years that, they don't really mess with cattle and stuff a lot. It seems like they're cognizant of certain things are going to cause a reaction and attention that they don't really want. Like we'll hear about them taking a chicken or things like that commonly. But, you don't really, maybe a pig every now and then you'll hear about them taking, but you do not hear them taking cows or calves or something like that. And there might be somebody in the country who'd say, well, I know this one case, but in general, when you're looking back here hundreds of years, it's just not something we see.
So on that note, I know from communication with Bigfoot type creatures, I guess, they are very, very empathic as well, just as anything that lives in the woods. But since they have a higher intelligence, obviously, that has a lot to do with why they don't over hunt because they have such a and that's also the whole native and Bigfoot kind of connection as well, because they have such a respect for other animals, trees, everything else.
So you're saying they just don't kill to kill, Trish?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because they're highly sensitive. They're very empathic. So by doing that, they would be, it's like any other empath. They would feel that same pain, they do have emotions. They do have, so that's one of the major reasons. So in all of the depictions that I've ever seen about Bigfoot, that is one of, I guess, the more factual ones. Like Harry and the Hendersons, obviously, where he's a vegetarian, loves everything, but he does get very angry and aggressive when somebody's, he thinks somebody's hurting the little family dog or something like it. And that's the same. I feel like that's kind of how I am, So
would you think that Bigfoot would be a vegetarian then?
I don't know necessarily vegetarian. I mean, some might be. I'm not a vegetarian, but I'm an empath, and I love animals, and I spend so much time in the forest. I grew up on top of a mountain, so it's just, that's obviously the circle of life. Yes, I eat meat, but I do not go hunting for the just for the hunt, just for the kill.
Just for the kill. But you're also saying that there's some mean humans and there's some mean Bigfoot that go around and they do probably capture people like missing 411 and kill them.
But I know the theory behind that.
People are coming at them with guns and everything else and screaming and acting crazy. So in self-defense, that probably happens a lot. It's the same with like when people encounter bears in the woods. Bears don't necessarily go after humans, but when humans are in their house, in their territory, and threatening them, of course they're gonna react.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just have never had, and maybe it's because I'm not doing that stuff or whatever, but I mean, probably until the last couple of years, I never even carried a gun all the time I'm in the woods, and I'm in places where you wouldn't want to be. Like you would be concerned if you didn't get out before dark, it would be a worry for you. You know, I mean, it's in a very, very remote place that, you know, you might be 20 miles from the nearest cell signal. So I think that I think that if something was going to happen to me, it could have happened to me anytime that I was a little boy. When I was running my trap line as a kid, you know, 7 or 8 years old, I couldn't do that at all now, but I was raised doing that and I didn't think anything of it when I was a young man. But, you know, I mean, I was always alone in the woods without any type of protection. Even
That's
running
how I
food
am.
You
and
wouldn't do that
everything else,
now.
you know, and you just didn't have, I
You
never
didn't
had
have
a
the
time where I
fear.
was worried.
You didn't have the fear when you were younger.
Well,
You know?
I'm more afraid. I am more afraid of running into a human in the woods than I am of any animal that might be there.
I'd be more afraid of running into a human in the woods.
Yeah, I'm more afraid of people than anything else in the world.
When you're when you're
I'm with
young,
you.
you don't have that fear though.
Hey Russ, whenever
Yes.
you say when you're with your cameras, the way you set it up,
Yes.
how high do you have them up the tree?
It just depends. I mean, I've carried them in, Sean, and for instance, there was this one place that this ranger had given me in this park that she thought was a very good remote section that might have, you know, if something was going to be around, that's probably where it'd be. Well, I went in there in February. This is like 3 years ago now, and I'll be in there at the exact same time next week, and snow was on the road, and the road's like a dead end park road for 3 or 4 miles. And so I knew nobody had been in there for a couple of weeks because nobody had broke the snow. And so when I went up this hollow, and as I'm walking up the hollow, you know, I can see that there's clear cuts on both sides, and they're about 20 years old. I'm just judging by the, you know, how the trees look. Mm-hmm. And when I get to the end of the hollow, I can see that there's a pine forest, you know, that's probably a couple hundred acres. Well, a lot of things in nature will be in those in inclement times. You know, it's 10 to 15 degrees warmer. So I thought, well, I'm going to drop a camera right here. And so I put a camera up, and as soon as I was doing it, there was a really loud wood knock, which is the noise, you know, that Bigfoot supposedly makes, although no one's really sure if it's a mouth pop or a hand clap or, you know, hitting a stick or whatever it happens to be. We just don't know. And my dog, which is always with me in the woods, the lab, he turned and looked too. And I said, well, that's where we're going, bub. And so then we just started right up the hollow where it came from. And I was carrying another camera with me, and I saw this little hollow, and I thought, if I can just get in there, something will not be able to see me do it. And so I slipped another camera up right then. And then there was an enormous, just bang, I mean, it wasn't 50 feet from me, but it was just right where I couldn't see it.
Right.
And so it goes on my Bigfoot calendar, right? So the next year, you know that I'm going to be there. So every year I'm around those same places, seeing if I can find evidence. And last year I found evidence the same place, roughly the same time. So, you know, I'm getting my calendar moved down. I moved 7 cameras into that one area for that.
A lot of cameras, huh, Sean?
Yeah, it's a shitload of cameras.
A lot of cameras.
No,
A
I mean,
lot of cameras.
That's too many, but I think Jason would be impressed.
Someone took 3 of the cameras. And so what I did then was there used to be in the 1800s 2 roads that went over that river. Now there's no way across it. So I took a ladder, and I would put my cameras, and they're about 15 feet high, and I have them watching that bridge, those 2 bridges. But it was interesting. I took my dad there before the book was coming out, because it was my last chance. I'm thinking maybe I'll get something really good to put in the book when one of these cameras. It's Ohio's areas that they have the most bobcats in the state, and you know, so I'm able to tell them how many bobcats they have. There's these formulas you can use and all this stuff. But I got in there, and the one camera was ripped off the tree. Just the half of it was left up there. And I got to the other camera, and it had been opened and just left alone. So I don't even know how something messed with my cameras. And they were 15 feet up hidden. But something messed with them.
Tree guardians.
Pardon me?
I don't know if you're familiar with there's forest guardians that people you know have been known to break trees and knock and all these other, and they're highly intelligent as well.
So you're saying there's something different than Bigfoot.
Right.
Okay.
But I mean, they guard the trees. So
maybe they're guarding the trees so you can't see.
So if they mess with the cameras and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, did you catch any audio? I mean, because you didn't get anything like, you didn't see a big hairy thing like,
no.
But did you catch any? Did you get any audio?
So
of
audio,
any kind of sounds,
like camera traps, or like, what's the drones or whatever? Those are specialties. So like in the area that I'm at, there's a medical doctor that I'm friends with, and that's his deal, and that's what he's interested in. So throughout this 10 to 12 mile park, he has long distance recorders up, long duration recorders.
Okay.
So they turn on at night around dark. They record all night and they click off in the morning, and they last about 6 weeks. And then periodically he'll walk in, move them or whatever. And then he keeps track of, he analyzes them with a computer program. And then he'll send me a message and say, Russ, that one camera that was out on this one place, blah, 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 there was a wood knock on this date. And I just add it to the calendar all the time. So I'm just trying to accumulate data for that thing all the time. Now,
why is it just at night though?
Yeah.
Just for resourcefulness, or?
Yeah, resourcefulness, because we don't have. It's interesting. There's these new recorders out now that ornithologists, bird doctors are using, and they found some new species. And what they're doing is they have software that'll analyze all the birds. So they're putting these recorders out. And then about once a month, they go in, they pull the recorder, they put it on software, and it analyzes every bird on there. And if there's an unidentified bird, then they send a biologist in, or an ornithologist, I should say. So it's cheap because, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to have people camping out. You just keep moving it around until you find something that's not there, and then you go send people in. And so that's the problem, though, with implementing the technology in the field, is it's just not lasting very long. So you're just choosing your poison. And although they make noises during the day, and all of us have heard them do stuff during the day, it's more common to happen at night.
Now,
go ahead.
Jen.
Go ahead.
No,
I was just going to say, when you said the wood knocking,
Yes.
is that's them communicating with each other?
Well, no one really knows, right? So, I mean, great apes will mouth pop. They'll stick their finger in there, and of course their mouth and their fingers are very large. And mountain gorillas, when the mother gets upset with her child, then she'll hand clap, and it's very loud. It's hard to imagine Bigfoot running around the woods with a stick every time that he needed to hit a tree. So,
so knocking, I don't know how familiar you are with portals and vortexes and stuff like that. Knocking is kind of a universal code for portals. So there's other cryptids that could use that as well, I guess.
Yeah. I can just tell you
that
it's
is a sign
rare
that
to
the portal's
hear.
nearby.
It's what?
It's
That
a sign
could be a
that
sign that a
portals.
portal's nearby. So,
Yeah.
which would be good indication that Bigfoot could be nearby.
The reality is that you don't commonly hear that noise. And all the time that you spend in the woods, like there was these two biologists that were, Hukin and Sullivan, they were in Washington, and they had a sighting in the 70s, got really interested. So they would go around in the woods, with their camera, because of course we didn't have phones, right? And they would take these notes that were really good. And they said that it took about 200 hours for you to come up with like hair or, maybe a sighting or whatever it happened to be. And so I found that when I was doing the first book, which was 6 years ago, that number was pretty good for me, that about every 200 hours I was having something happen. That's a lot of time in the woods, that you're just hiking. Normally nothing happens. But what I have found now that I've concentrated on just several areas, that it happens much more frequently to me, but invariably you do not hear it that much. I'm suspicious if I see somebody or somebody files a report or whatever it is, that they're just hearing stuff and seeing stuff all the time. And, you know, there's these people that we have called habituators, which they are either knowingly or unknowingly feeding something, maybe a Bigfoot, without realizing it. You know, maybe they throw their scraps out every night, or maybe they have a great big garden, or maybe they have a lot of deer, but they don't like anybody to kill anything, so they post their property heavily. So things are in there, and so they're having an effect on those animals, you know, that are like that. So some of those people are around that are commonly having interactions, but the problem is they start to enjoy the interaction with the animal, and they really just don't care about the research anymore. And like I said, that's the issue that we have. I just did an interview with these two scientists that were from University of Cardiff, I think, in Great Britain. And they were curious about the Bigfoot thing. And their whole deal was that how many trained people were doing the research, you know, and everybody's, you know, because like I told you, it's like 10% of us that are legitimately doing some type of science-based research. And then the rest of the people are, you know, they just want to have an experience. They're just out there for the fun, which is cool, right? I mean, I'm not against that at all. I'm just saying it's just not research, just, you know.
Now, see, nothing against that, which call that you are scientific and you're going by a scientific approach about this. But I know for me in ghost hunting that I've been in the business for over 30 years now. Okay. I'm more on the spiritual side of the thing. Okay. Not so much on the scientific. I do kind of balance it out because I do look for the scientific things. But my question to you would be, how would you accept a person like me, you know, going after a Bigfoot with my gifts, you know, or what I know what to do? You know what I mean? Not just going out to get a reaction or get touched or whatever. I'm just saying, hey, I want to go search Bigfoot, but I want to do it my way.
Yeah.
What would you?
Well, I mean, it's America, so it's the great thing everybody gets.
Well, I know, but to me, I want to know how you would feel if someone would come up to you and say, hey, listen, let's work together, but let me do my way and you do your way. How would you go with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, as I was talking about the two women that were psychics, I mean, it's not my deal, but, you know, I mean, they're friends of mine and I respect that people have different varying views. And so I was open-minded, you know, and I would listen to them just like I would listen to a witness that maybe had, you know, because no one really knows the mystery, right? I mean, everybody kind of thinks they do, or they may have a suspicion, but, you know, Trish thinks one way, I may think another way, you may think another way, but none of us really know for sure yet. And so I think that it's good that people come in and would do different things like you would do. The only thing that I would say is that I think that there's a danger, once again, to attaching paranormal to something that you should rule out the normal physiological before we jump to something is, you know, outside of normal realm, so to speak.
Okay.
Russ, why do you suppose that there hasn't been a sighting? Do you think it's because the Bigfoot doesn't want to be seen? Or
there's lots of sightings.
Well, I mean, actually see like proof that get it on some camera.
Get it on camera.
Like video, like right up, close up. You think he's just too quick? Or
no, there's a lot of film that's out there. I mean, of course, the greatest one that's known or the most well-known is 1976, or 67, the Patterson-Gimlin film, which is, you know, no one's ever proven it to be fake of any type at all. And there's actually a lot of images on the internet that a lot of people find compelling and believe. But sadly, we're at this time with technology that, man, people can do some stuff.
Yeah.
And so kind of like we were talking about earlier, unless, you know, like if you guys hear a month from now that Russ Jones got a picture of a Bigfoot on game cam, you might think, well, you know, I know Russ, I don't think he'd fake something. So, you know, it's probably
yeah.
But you know what I mean? If it wasn't somebody I knew.
Or your camera outside, like why, you know, all of a sudden there's something on it. You know, why do you think that you're not catching it on one of your trail cams?
So I think once again that it's with the camera that, you know, it's something what Trish is saying. Excuse me, it's an electrical thing. It's an energy thing. I can tell you that I have pictures where they will stick twigs in front of my cameras. That happens all the time.
You
Not
mean
all
the
the time, but
Bigfoot doing that? He's put it. You can see the twigs set up.
yeah, you know, when you're setting a camera up, you're making sure that there's nothing in front of your camera. So, you know, you're not, I don't want to look at a squirrel all day, and I don't want to look at one limb or one leaf blowing, you know, 80,000 times literally. And so I found that the more remote your camera is, the more interested in that they may mess with it. So for instance, like here a while back, I had one of my peanut butters disappear. Well, you know, some of the peanut butters may have a camera on them. Some of them may not have a camera on them. Like this one did not. And so it was duct taped to a tree. So I take the duct tape, you know, there's some hair on it. I save it, you know, I have it now, but then I instantly replaced it with some really pretty colored crystals, you know, for them again, once again, no cameras on it. I'm just giving them stuff. For all I know, it's a person that was way back in there in the middle of nowhere. I have no idea, you know, I'm just trying. But they will mess with the cameras once again. You know, it's common for me to see that. Or what about the, you know, like we were talking about earlier, you know, so you move all your cameras in one region because there was a sighting there and you were in the exact spot. And so you have 4 cameras in there, and that same 10-day period, all 4 cameras have no animals on them. So you know that something's in there disrupting. Now it could be a mountain lion, you know, it could be whatever, but it's just something that you have to record and be attentive to it, that, you know, something's disrupting the animals in that area at that particular time. But there's a picture out of Pennsylvania called Jacob's Creature that, you know, a lot of people believe is a Bigfoot. You can Google that.
With Jacob's Creature?
Jacob's Creature. If you Google that, it'll show you a picture of a juvenile Bigfoot, people believe, that was taken by a game camera. And I would say that I gave a talk at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, which is the largest one in the world, just on game cameras 2 years ago. And I showed some pictures that hadn't been in the public yet. And there's some pictures around of Bigfoot, you know, like there was one that came out of Kentucky, and it was like an older animal that was like gray and balding, and it was eating corn from like a feeder. So, you know, it's probably near the end of its life cycle, and probably wasn't as concerned maybe about, you know, I was more concerned about just finding the food source. But I think that there'll be, you know, once again, I think that somebody will come up with a way to do it, how to get a picture, maybe, right? Maybe not, who knows? And if someone figures it out, then all of us will be able to do it. And I think that that's the reality of Bigfoot. If a coal truck hits one today in Pennsylvania or Ohio or West Virginia, and then all of a sudden you're going to see all this evidence come out that these people have been holding videos, bones, things that people just don't want bothered by and don't want the public to mess with them by. But when it comes out, I think we're going to see a lot of evidence at once.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because people ask me that all the time, just like with the forest, the tree structures and stuff, and with ghosts, with whatever. These things happen to me every single day. So to me, it was never, I don't even think about getting a picture or something, you know, because I'm psychic and intuitive, and I attract those things, and I always have. So it's just something that's kind of second nature, and we don't think about it. We're not thinking about getting proof for any reason. Or so when I, you know, come across these things, or even with
No, I want proof.
But that's what I'm saying.
that.
I'm like, oh shoot, I didn't know you wanted proof. Like I could give you, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a thing, like, and I think that's the same reason that so many people haven't encountered them, because they don't want you to. Obviously, if there's kind of a equal threat perception not only between you perceiving them also perceiving you as a threat, because they, you know, maybe they don't know that much about humans, they're not going to let people see them. So
yeah,
Plus, it's kind of the law of attraction thing. You know, if you go out actually looking for something, you're less likely to encounter it. But it's always on those times that you're not looking for anything that you encounter it. So see, when I go into the woods or when I go into a haunted house or whatever, I'm not looking for a cryptid or a ghost or whatever, because I already know those exist. So then I just attract them. They, you know, and it always happens. But I'm not specifically, I don't set my intention on finding anything specific.
I'd say that I'm the same way, because, you know, it's 100 or 200 hours before I even hear anything or see anything. So, I mean, I'm looking at every mud hole to see if I see a track, and I'm always listening. But, you know, majority of the time I'm just hiking with my dog.
Yeah, really.
You know, and it's good for you, and it's good, healthy to be out, and I enjoy it. And I've done it my whole life. And so, but I appreciate, you know, what you're saying too. I mean, I know that there's all different types of people, and all different types of people have different, you know, like you said, you know, when your deal, when you weren't interested in it. And then, you know, a lot of people, they don't really know, like before the Finding Bigfoot TV show, most people didn't know that Bigfoot had noises associated with it. And then,
or smells, things
yeah,
like that.
yeah, exactly. And so it was funny, last year I have this farm, and I bought my farm strictly because of Bigfoot activity. And I border a park for 3/4 of a mile. And I was down in the middle of all this thick brush. I mean, you can barely get through it. My uncle was with me, and I was trying to find this place where they used to have a culvert pipe so I could get through there with my tractor. And so all at once I found this bed, and it had all these limbs that were maybe like, you know, I don't know, as big as my wrist, maybe half that size, but they were all twisted off. And so I'd stop my uncle, and I'm like, look at this. And he turned around, he's like, what? I'm like, look, you see that? And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, something had to made this. They had to twist this off. This didn't happen here. But see, it wasn't related to deer or to turkeys or to anything that he was interested in, like everybody else. So everybody else would have walked right by it just like he did. They didn't know that they'd had an experience. You know, that's like my grandfather. You know, he was the greatest outdoorsman I ever met in my life. And him and I would sit in the most remote places in Ohio. Back then in the 70s, we had no good, there was no headlamps. There was no good flashlights. We were using a carbide light, which is this little thing like a candle that has gas going down in it. And, you know, every couple of hours, he'd have to get in there and clean it out with a copper wire. And we would be sitting in the middle of these remote woods, miles from the nearest road, eating apples, waiting for our dogs to bark. And we would hear the wood knocks, and I'd say, Grandpa, what's that? He's like, well, somebody slams a car door, and it's miles down the hollow, and it makes its way up here, and it sounds funny like that. But he didn't know. You know, that's just what he thought.
That's what he thought it was.
Yeah. But if I could go back now and say, Grandpa, you know, listen, these are all these things or whatever, then there would probably be tons of things he'd say. Well, you know, I had this one time happen to me that I swear something was watching me, and I heard a noise, what you're talking about, and, you know, and he was in all these remote places, ginseng hunting and stuff, and coon hunting by himself. But so I suspect there's a lot of people that have had Bigfoot experiences, but just didn't recognize them for what they were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Before we move on, I want to thank our sponsor for sponsoring this second hour, Carnation. We want to thank you, Carnation, for sponsoring us. And if you have a chance, go out and get some Carnation instant breakfast. It'll start your day off right. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Carnation. The Jacob creature, is that what the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you see the one with the bear?
Yeah. So you can tell people put it up there, and it doesn't really look like a bear when they do that.
Well, my question is,
this is what they were saying.
Is it possible that it could have been photoshopped?
Oh, the Jacob's creature?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, look at this. It looks like a bear.
I'm just asking a question. I just want to know if it's because we take a ton of pictures, and I've seen guys put Photoshop ghosts into pictures, and you know, to me, that looks like it's Photoshop, and that's just my opinion. I'm not degrading it. To me,
sure.
Well,
I don't care, Sean, because it's not mine. But
right.
It's
That's
the
what I'm
same
saying.
thing that you
but
and I were talking about earlier.
It does look like a bear.
Well, I mean, there's sites that you can go to where primatologists have done the ratios to show that there's a difference there. Like if you do research or whatever on that particular picture. But the reality is, like we were saying earlier, none of us even know who that guy is. I just know that there was on that ground right in front of that animal was this stuff called Khmer deer, which deer hunters put out. And so that was what was on the ground there.
Oh, okay.
So that animal was after.
What is that? What are you talking
it's
about?
like a mineral that deer hunters
like
will
over
use.
Here.
Yeah. It's called Khmer deer. And
it's like a big person like bending over to pick something up.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I'm not sure it's
it is interesting.
Of course, like Sean and I were talking about, I mean, unless you know the person, I mean, how are you supposed to even really know? I mean, the way our technology is now, I mean, it's a struggle. And so maybe that's in the end why scientists are probably only going to accept, this is a species, although Todd Discotel, which is a DNA expert at New York University, he's making an argument now that with the EDNA and the FLIR type thermal stuff, that you could probably come up with enough between a track and the EDNA and some other type of video footage that you wouldn't necessarily need, a dead animal.
What were some of the unusual things that they found throughout the Appalachians that you know of? That they found?
Like, you mean like specifically?
Yeah, unusual things that they found that were unusual.
You mean like related to Bigfoot stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it was always accepted by the Indians that there were certain areas that they didn't usually, meaning the Indians didn't usually stay in. There were certain areas that they respected just for hunting, or certain areas they accepted as spiritual. And those are typically the areas where the greatest number of Bigfoot sightings would be. There is a long history. Daniel Boone, on his deathbed, confessed that he had shot a Bigfoot. He called it I'm trying to think of it. The book that was popular back then was called Gulliver's Travels. It was a Yahoo. As he said, he shot a Yahoo on his deathbed, which was a ape-like animal that was 8 to 10 foot tall. And Davy Crockett said that he had shot one as well. So there's some historical people through Appalachia that believe that they'd had encounters like that. I mean, I think that another thing too, I was thinking about this right before I came on because I didn't want to lose track of it. Usually people say like, how many of them would there be in North America? And so, most of the time I'd say that most of us would estimate between 4 and 20,000 in all of North America. Wow. And so then if you started looking at it and you thought that it was, some type of primate, that the average age is going to live is, around 50 or so. And then there's usually a 5 to 7% attrition rate. So in all of North America, you would only have around, 400 or so that would die a year to be found. Then you start dividing them out around populations based on, different factors. And say in the whole state of Pennsylvania, there may only be 3 or 4 animals to be found. So, the odds are not very good that someone would be able to find something like that anyways, and that doesn't take into account, some people believe that, there's several reports of them burying dead or putting large rocks over the dead. And there's other mammals that do that as well. So, maybe they do that, or, maybe they're just like all the other predator animals that I was saying earlier. I mean, there's tons more mountain lions than there is Bigfoot, but we don't find mountain lion bones either. So if we're not finding something that is outnumbering Bigfoot in a great deal, we're probably not going to find Bigfoot bones as well. And let's face it, I mean, if you're traveling in the woods, you're probably not picking up a bone unless it's like a skull that looks like a human or something. You might pick that up or something, but most of the bones.
Witches collect bones.
Yeah.
Trish, what were your thoughts? You were going to say something.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, to put it into perspective, Bigfoot, you know, especially in native beliefs and stuff, they had different kind of tribes, I guess, and there were wars amongst them, just like any other, just like humans or any other animal, or even like mountain lions, because it's kind of a territorial thing. And as you said earlier, some were more violent than others, even against each other. So this happened, which I assume is why you hear more stories from the 1800s, because there were more back then. And they started literally killing each other because, you know, like a mountain lion, one mountain lion has like 100-mile radius, a pretty big area. And they don't get along well with other mountain. You know, it's kind of the same concept. And so when you think about it in that perspective, it's another, you know, being that's trying to preserve its race to not go extinct. And so, and somebody told me this when I was little and lived in the mountains, you know, they told me this in relation to like redheads. They're like, well, there's only 1% in the entire world. So you're not going to, because I never saw another one.
Yeah.
So I was like, that makes sense, you know, so you're not going to see the same when people say they never see them. Well, there's literally thousands upon thousands of acres of national forests and wilderness and everything else that hasn't even been, you know, discovered or walked through or anything by man. So.
Yeah. More now than there's ever been for the last, since, well, in the 80 years, it's increased to around 20%. So a lot of people have the perspective or the, you know, that man's been everywhere and that, you know, we've found everything there is to be discovered, but, you know, that's not the reality. You know, one of the interesting things I think of, like, I don't know if you guys have heard about Action Jackson, which was, you know, that renowned forest ranger from Yellowstone, you know, and Yellowstone's one of the only places in the country that you can be in one spot and it's 20 something miles in each direction to a road. And, you know, he was the one that patrolled that area and for poachers on horseback or whatever. And of course, he just recently retired and he had a Bigfoot sighting he talked about. So, you know, it's hard to question some of those people, you know, that are out there. I mean, we have all different types of witnesses, but, you know, I've made the argument too that there's some witnesses that we have to attach a little more worth to what they're saying. And, you know, you know, historically than what, you know, we may on something else. But I thought it was interesting. I've been reading this book. Let me grab it here real quick.
I wonder how many have been spotted, or if he uses Google Earth.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
You know, because that is everywhere now, I guess.
To spot it, Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Google Earth.
We could do.
I can see that.
Well, because they catch other things, you know, in
Right.
the middle.
Yeah, it would be great if they did.
Earth,
Maybe
like
somebody should.
shipwrecks
There you
and
go,
planes,
Ross. Maybe you can look into that and see if they've ever
Sadly,
caught
there's
anything.
people that are on Facebook right now that have it. They say that they've caught it and they look at things.
Gosh.
Have you guys seen this book here before? Wait a second, let me get over here.
No, I've never heard of it.
What is it?
It's called
Great
The Great
Soul.
Soul of Siberia.
No.
So it's a story about how one man went to an extent to be able to get a picture of the first film of a Siberian tiger.
Oh.
So the animal's 10 feet long, you know, and it's a rare animal, but the gentleman lived for 6 months inside a tomb about the size of a grave down below zero, just to be able to get a picture of the animal.
Wow.
Black rhinoceroses, which we know exist. The scientist right now that's trying to get game cam pictures of them. He has 500 game cameras out. He doesn't have a picture yet, and it's been 3 years.
Oh.
What was
He's been in
that?
that cave that long.
The reality is that most of the time people are living their lives. We're all busy. Mm-hmm. We have a family. We have a job. We have COVID. We have all this stuff. And we're not that interested in certain things. And most people aren't that interested in Bigfoot or the intricacies of Bigfoot. And if there's really evidence that's out there, whatever it happens to be, it can be frustrating. I know last week, my friend Matt Moneymaker, the lawyer from the TV show, was on NPR, and they were doing an interview with him, and there was an anthropologist from University of Illinois on there, and they were kind of debating a little bit. And in the end, the anthropologist had said, well, in the end, you just don't have any proof. And Matt had said, oh, gosh, man, you're just so wrong. You just don't even know. You're just not interested enough to bother
Just
to look.
not interested enough.
But, if many times I'll do a show and they'll have some type of different type of doctor on there, and we'll be debating the issues or whatever, but we're debating the same things that most of us have worked out years and years ago. Like, they may have somebody talking to me that they don't think that there's enough food for there to be a species like that. And of course, you're rolling your eyes when you're thinking about it, because you're like, we already dealt with all this. I mean, we already know there's enough food out there. I mean, no one doesn't think that there's enough food. No one doesn't think there's enough terrain or territory. I mean, it's there's all those things for a species to exist.
Okay,
Now, I'm
I
not
have one
saying what the
question for
species
you.
is, but I'm just saying it could be there.
I have a question for you. Now, we talk about aliens and UFOs, and Jenny knows where I'm coming from. Now, I've seen ghosts, and I'm a ghost hunter. And I believe in aliens, but to make sure it's 100% correct, I want to shake an alien's hand. You know what I mean?
You want to shake Bigfoot's hand, Russ?
No, it's not
Yeah,
that, Russ.
I
What
don't
would
want to
you
hurt
do,
one. I don't want
honestly?
to shoot one.
Honestly, what would you do if you got that picture, you got all the evidence? What would you feel inside? Like, I mean, what would be your emotion if you had that?
Before Bigfoot
I
tears
wish
them
that
apart?
it wasn't. I wish that I wouldn't need the pride thing to be able to say to my mind to so many people, I told you
It's
so.
not pride, but would you be humble? Because I know I was humble.
I that's the whole thing, is I want to tell you that I want to be humble, and I don't want to say anything to all those people, because I've invested thousands of hours a year, every year, and thousands of dollars, tens of thousands a year, just on Bigfoot stuff.
No.
And spend all my time on there. In the end, if I'm wrong, I mean, I got to spend all that time in the woods, right? I mean, it was pretty cool, and it was a good time for me. But I don't want to kill one. I definitely believe that I'll resolve the issue. I mean, of course, I believe that, and this is just me, that it's a flesh and blood type animal. I hope that it doesn't make me pull a gun when I'm in the woods. Mm-hmm. I don't want to have to do that.
I think that when you do, and I say when you do, because you will, as you already answered your own question, once you get past the pride thing, encounter Bigfoot, I don't think you will put it out there. I think because it is your life's work and your passion,
you want to keep it a secret.
By that point, you will be. It's such encountering any new animal or even interdimensional beings, aliens, spirits, whatever. It's such a personal journey as well. And so you become, I think you'll become more interested in building a relationship with it than letting the entire world come and ruin it,
Maybe so.
Or it'll happen so fast that you don't even have time to get your camera. It might be that
Jen,
situation.
what happens commonly like that is when you're a woodsman and you've been in the woods your whole life, every little thing that you hear or see, automatically your brain categorizes without you even thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So when I go in the woods every day, I tell myself, no matter what, pause, because it was last fall or last August, I think, if I remember right, I had to look at my calendar. And I was in this one spot because there was two gentlemen that had a Bigfoot sighting on that week the year before. So, I'm using my calendar. I'm in the same place, trying to reproduce, same area. They might be around, who knows. And it had rained a lot the night before. And when I got there and parked, there was nobody around. And so I got up on top of this mountain and I'm coming along. Well, your dog's supposed to, in theory, be on a leash whenever you're in parks, but Shade listens to me well, and he's off leash, but he's always about 20 feet in front of me. And so I saw in my mind a hiker just like 60 feet from me, 60 yards from me, that was wearing buff collared and had a backpack on. And I just literally for an instant, and as soon as I saw it, I just went, The shade ran right to me, and I clicked him on the leash, and we started walking. It literally wasn't 10 seconds later, and I realized that the trail turned the other way, and what I saw was off trail. Well, then instantly I was suspicious, and I ran right there. There's this ridge, and I could see the whole area, and there was just nothing there. But my brain had categorized something in an instant. And so now I'm using a GoPro all the time on a hiking stick, and I'm carrying that with me. So if I would have had that with me that day,
caught it.
I would have been able to see, what it was or whatever. I would have had a clear shot of it.
That's great. But before we let you go, I just want to mention your book on the Appalachian Bigfoot is on Amazon. And I noticed earlier today it was number 1.
Yeah,
and
it's been number 1 for a couple weeks.
Yeah, and it's great. Yeah, so that's awesome. And
I read the first book called Tracking the Stone Man, and that was 6 years ago. And then I wrote this one, the Appalachian Bigfoot, and it just came out, I think, last
2020?
month.
2021.
And then the publisher had emailed me asking me to do a second edition on the first book.
That's
so
awesome.
I'll be going back later this year and adding content to it.
Who's your publisher?
Beyond the Fray.
I should see if they want to pick me up.
Hey, talk to them.
Yeah. I'll say that. Can I mention you? I can say, yeah.
Reach out to me and I'll send you some contact information.
Definitely.
There you go.
There you
go.
Got something in the works. But it was a fascinating topic. It's one of our favorite. I know it's one of my favorites.
The book. Do you think there's any relation between Bigfoot and giants?
Gosh, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, especially in
because they've been finding a lot of those bones. I just thought about that in the last few years.
Yeah,
and some of them were hairy.
Yeah, some of them were buried. It's disturbing when you see a lot of them because there's pictures historically of whole towns around these large giant skeletons. And then, of course, a lot of people believe that at the turn of the century that the Smithsonian did away with them because, it kind of was a concern that it was going to fly in the effect of some type of religious issues. And so, they just disappeared. I'm not sure that like here in Charleston and along the Ohio River Valley, we have some that, like the ones here were 5 skeletons were 8 foot tall. So those were probably not a Bigfoot type thing because, it's more of a ceremonial burial type thing or whatever. But I'm suspicious of, I think it's interesting, it's like, I want to say it was 2 years ago here. There was this, 2 rivers that come into Charleston. And there was this guy that was kayaking. And this is, Daniel Boone lived here on the river. And it's not like, there haven't been people here for hundreds of years. And this guy is noticed this stone stuff when he was kayaking, literally almost in downtown Charleston, climbed up there and pulled back these rocks. And there were these Native American skeletons in there that were ceremonial laid out. And they had been there. And it makes me wonder, there's a lot of stuff around that we just haven't found, that I would like to bump in that are pretty cool. But, I think that believing in Bigfoot is a romantic notion.
Yeah, it's magical.
It is. It's something neat to think that there's things left out there to be discovered for us and that we don't know everything. And that, if we pause and we're open-minded and we just like doing something we like to do and be outside anyways, that maybe as Trish said, I'll become laid back enough that, maybe I'll be in the right place. And I have it in my mind how it's going to happen, exactly where it's going to walk. And I see it and it's, walking to my right, to my left, and it looks at me and walks along. And, so maybe that'll be the way.
Maybe he'll give you a big hug.
I'm trying to manifest it.
I think he watches you.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that also today, is that they see you all the time.
Yeah.
And maybe you got a good rapport with them, but maybe they're afraid to come see you. Think about it.
The one psychic that's out west, she had told me, I'm trying to think, I think she called him a clan. And she was saying the one that was around your farm, that's where I grew up hunting and being in the woods all the time. She's like, she said, they know who you are and there's 5 of
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah, it's our
And
clan.
they're familiar with you.
That's what I
And,
was picking up too, and that's what I mean. I think it's just a matter of when you get on their same, it's the same with people and stuff. If you're on the same vibration, you're more comfortable approaching somebody, and whether it be animals or people or anything, So
Just be on the
I just want
lookout.
them to come out and play.
Yeah, just tell them that. Put it out in the
Yeah.
Yeah, put
put
it
it out there
and
in the
tell 'em.
universe. You just want
Well,
to
you
be
never know, right?
pals. That's
Well,
all.
think
But
about
we're
it.
gonna have to
Hold
let
on.
you go,
Oh.
Rush.
Hey, I
but
appreciate you guys having me
it
on.
was
It was
a
good to talk to you
great
guys. You
show.
were
Yeah, it
interesting.
was.
We'll be in
Real good show.
contact. Have you back on. Get that second book out or third
Yeah,
book, and we'll put you back on. And thanks again for
You're
joining
welcome,
us
guys.
tonight.
Thanks,
Good talking
Russ.
to you.
And everyone
Russ.
on here, make sure you go check out his book. It's a good read. I read it. But thank you so much for joining us
You're
tonight.
welcome.
You have a great one.
thank you.
That was a good. Good. Where did Sean go?
Oh no.
Dude, I didn't mean to do that. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you did.
I did not.
Yeah, you did.
I did not. No, it was a good book, and I wanted to go over some other stuff, but I want to concentrate on our last 47 minutes. No, not 47 minutes.
No,
47.
47. Come on, girl.
I was
You
looking
wanna-
at it's 10,
You want to
it's
run into my shit?
10:47. No, 15 minutes.
Oh my God, that was a good show. I mean,
Yeah, he was very interesting,
Mhm.
and I like the fact that he's not too far from us.
no, not at all.
Yeah, so that's good. So let me take this. What?
Colorado has a lot of Bigfoot sightings. I wonder if he's ever been to,
I'm sure
further
he
west.
Oh,
And I know we do a lot on Bigfoot, and I know we're gonna have Stan Gordon, but I was gonna hopefully we have him on in February, but I hope we can talk to him more about the other weird stuff that's going around around this area and all over the country. It seems like there's a lot of weird sounds.
there
People are
is.
hearing trumpets still. Bangs, a lot of asteroids. There's another one coming. It's like one after the other. I mean, we're gonna pretty soon it's just gonna knock us off to the universe.
that's the way I look at it. I mean, there's some places that recently, like within the last couple of weeks, I'd be just outside my backyard, and I'm thinking,
You're hearing these weird noises.
yeah,
I
something's
don't know about
watching
you,
me.
Kansas. I don't know if you're hearing those loud noises. Seems
I
like there's a
mean,
lot
It's
of them.
just weird.
Yeah, it's I've heard them forever. So, and as
Yeah.
I was telling you all, it was years ago, which you can't find it on the internet anymore, or anywhere for that matter. I assume they've been deleted. But the same thing happened in 2018.
Yeah,
And then I
saw
think
that.
also in 2012, but obviously we didn't
Something
have,
weird
internet,
happened, some kind of time
smartphones and
warp.
stuff in 2012.
There was some kind of a time warp or something. Everybody felt it.
Yeah.
And so, it's been, I don't know why it hasn't been researched more. I have my theories behind that, but it's been around for a long time.
It's a lot of weird stuff is happening. Unfortunately, there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the news that I know we don't talk about it, but we might be getting into some kind of conflict in which I'm not really
Hey,
happy
Tom.
about.
I'm saying hello to Tom.
Hey,
I'm
Tom, how you
Hey.
doing?
All right,
Can't
brother.
wait to check you out in Gettysburg.
Yeah, he did. He's a good dude, man. He's a good dude.
Before we leave the show, okay, so tell us again about this ghost hunt you're going on.
Yeah, it is down. It's called the Buxton Inn.
Buxton.
Inn, and I think it was built in the early 1800s. The lady wanted me to get to. She wanted to share, the different type of hauntings that they have down there. But I told her not to tell me, because what I like to do is when I go into a place, I like to, see what I can pick up. But we're going to be there three times this year. This weekend, February 19th and March 26th. And if you want to come and join us, just give the Buxton Inn a call and make some reservations.
There you
And
go,
we'll be more than
Trish.
happy to take you.
The bus.
And Trish, you're coming to New York with us in September, aren't you?
New York. What's in New York?
I hope.
I can't go.
Yeah, I hope to plan a trip out. I have family in the Northeast. So I hope to plan a trip out there at some point this year, anyways, and
We
travel.
are the unvaccinated allowed to go to New York.
The Helmsman House. Our guest for next week.
Oh, that's right. I
Yeah,
forgot about that guy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see you in New York. But I'm telling you what, I'm going to take a plane to Kansas. You will pick me
Yes.
up, and then we will go ghost hunting for a weekend. Then I'll fly back.
There you go.
I'm hoping to join Apex. We had
That'd
them
be
on
cool.
the show.
There you go.
Depending
There you
on
go.
weather, but I'm pretty sure I can make it this Friday at the McIntyre Villa in Atchison as well. So that should be exciting.
Now, is Atchison a really, really haunted place, like a ghost town of some sort?
Yes. there's a lot of history there too. There's going back to Civil War and there's the Santa Fe Railroad goes through there. So when the Santa Fe Railroad began, it was Topeka, Atchison, and Santa Fe. So
wow.
It was a major, it was one of the major stops in the West, or I guess at that time it was the West. It wasn't the Midwest.
That'd be cool. That'd be
There
cool.
you go.
And I'm going to set up my trail cams all over that end because I got 4 of them. So I'm not going to buy that many. I'm sorry, I can't afford that many. They're expensive. The trail cams.
My God. He has all those, 40 cameras?
Yeah, trail cam.
too
I
many.
mean, it's just, to me, I like to have 4 or 5, so, and that's the best. Anybody out there, our listeners, if you want, that's the best camera to get because all you do is set it up, turn it on, and let it go because you don't have to manipulate anything. And they're really, really good. That's my tip for paranormal investigating tonight.
You're so
My thing is, I think until people start noticing literally everything else there is in nature, they're not going to see things that aren't common. People don't notice little mushrooms and ant colonies and butterflies and stuff, that are there every single day. So, but yet they're looking for something that's pretty rare. It's and that's become it's something with humans that we do that because we are so involved in our lives and work and everything else that you stop paying attention to the little things. But
for me, real quick, recently, and I don't go looking for them, they pop up, or they're like little strawberries that come out of the ground. Have you ever heard of that before? They're little strawberries, they're little red things. They're to me that.
Well, there's many different berries. But
I mean, this sucker's grown from the
strawberries?
ground. Yeah, it's like a strawberry or something. It looks like one. I won't eat it because I don't know if I'll die. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't
Yeah,
do it.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't recommend.
I wouldn't
eating.
eat it if I were you.
You
wouldn't.
miss me if I died. You all be missing.
We would miss
We
you.
would miss you.
You
Some of
silly
you
goose.
weird berries growing out, unidentified berries in the forest.
There was like
Yeah.
some movie I watched this weekend. It was really weird. It was about a designer and his waitress, and she was poisoning him with mushrooms. It's like, what am I watching this for?
Wow.
It's like, I don't know why I watched it.
I don't know.
It was
How's
boring.
Ava doing? Is she getting better?
No, she's itching like crazy. I don't know what's wrong with her.
Is it shedding or her hair? What do you think?
I don't know what's going on with her. She's just itching like crazy. I had her on Abaquel, and it's just not. I don't know what if it's. I thought maybe she had frostbite because we went playing in the snow for like, oh God, it was so long. I don't know what's going on with her. She's just scratching the hell out of herself. I mean, hair everywhere. I mean, I wake up in the morning and there's hair all over the living room, my bedroom, the hallway. So I don't know what's going on with her. Something is not right.
That's
Something
not good.
is not right.
And how about Thor? How's Thor doing, Trish?
Good. But my animals, like me lately, I know the solar flares being more
Maybe that's it.
intense than they have been, I think, in documented history, affects all of us. You know, it affects me when I go out in the sun and stuff. My hair starts falling out, and I can't. It affects electronics. You know, as a photographer, it has fried camera batteries and stuff before, so that's a concern to all of us, obviously. But a lot of people aren't aware of the dangers of the solar flares, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff happening out there. Oh, I have to tell you something before we go. I was talking to my good friend about my dad, and I said, if I could have 5 minutes with him, just 5 more minutes with him. So I had a dream last night, and they say your loved ones come into if you dream of your loved ones that had passed, it's probably the actual ghost.
Mhm.
So last night I dreamt that was really weird. Don't take this the wrong way. It was the weirdest thing. I take a lot of Epsom salt baths because of my autoimmune diseases and my flare. I'm in a big flare up right now. And where I was in a car accident, I hurt my leg really bad. And there's a gigantic hematoma that's still there that never went away. It faded, but it takes up most of my leg. And it hurts. I have nerve damage so bad that that's why I'm on carnivore now. I'm trying to get rid of all the sugar and wheat from my body. Anytime I eat sugar or wheat, I go into a big flare up. So I take these Epsom salt baths. And my dad, he took baths, but he didn't use Epsom salts, which is something we had in common. So in my dream last night, it was so weird. I'm in a huge bathtub, and I'm in the bathtub, and I'm feeling really depressed, and I feel like something worrisome's on my mind, and I'm really like, I'm so worried about this. And all of a sudden, I see my dad, and he comes into the bath. I guess it's like a bathroom, but it wasn't my bathroom. It was really very, 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 I don't know, big and beautiful. And he starts taking his clothes off, and he goes in the bathtub. I'm like, Dad, whoa, bro, Dad, dude, what are you doing? You know, he doesn't look at me, but he gets in the water, and he just sits and he puts his arms back around the edge of the bathtub. I said, what are you doing in here? This is just, Dad, you're so weird. This is not right. You know, and he just looks down. He didn't look at me, and he goes, I'm proud of you.
Aw,
And then
cool.
I know, and then that's it. And then I woke up, and I was thinking, I go, did I just dream this, or this is really weird? Did he? I couldn't remember if he said I loved you. So I'm like, did he say he loved me too?
I was getting something about Revelations. I don't know. He was trying to give you a Bible verse, I guess. I don't know if that resonates for
I
somebody.
don't know. But then I went back to sleep because I said, I wonder if he said it. Did I hear him say I love you? So I was really like, did he say I love it? I fell back to sleep, and all of a sudden I see my dad again, and he goes, I love you.
Ooh.
I'm proud of you, and I love you.
Oh,
And I woke up.
yeah, that's
That
cool.
was such a sweet.
Yes.
I mean, because in my conversation I was having with my friend, I go, if I could just have 1 minute with my dad, because she was feeling like overwhelmed with her, family and her father. And I just said, if I could have 1 more minute with my dad, I would take it in a second. And then I went to bed last night, and I had that dream, but it was just so weird because I know the bath. I don't know. My dad took baths all the time, and I take them all the time. It's just something we had in common, I guess. And it was just so weird. I don't know. I just want to share that because I thought that was really paranormal.
Thank you for sharing
Thank
that.
you,
That
yeah.
made my night. Yeah, that
Well,
was
I'm
good.
glad.
And it was definitely a message. Spirits are always there. You just have to literally ask, like you did, and then you visited.
That was weird because I have never dreamt like that of my dad. It was really, and I always wondered if he was proud of me, and because he never really said it, especially towards the end of his life, But yeah, it made my day when I woke up. I told my mom, I said, cry, but it was really nice. But I'm
Good.
excited about next week. Show. I'm excited for you with your ghost adventure. So
Yeah.
I really wish you would do a Facebook Live
We will do a Facebook Live.
so me and Trish can make fun of you now. And look out for the Drukos. Oh, watch out. Watch
Yeah.
out for the duck creatures coming back.
What I'm
to get
going to
you.
do real quick before we sign off is that I'm going to go down there, and I might go live in the afternoon and take some photos or some video of the place that we're going to be at, because if you look it up online, it's a very, very pretty place. Very
Yeah, we
pretty.
should get some pictures and post it. And so we're gonna like, that's where you're going. Wait,
This Saturday.
that's Saturday. It's
This Saturday coming up.
It's not the show we're doing, is it? No, you're
No,
doing that, and when are you doing that?
that's in September.
Too bad you couldn't get those people on. That would be really cool.
Mm.
You can try it. So
I am hoping to have a rune reader.
What's a
on my show
rune?
next week. And
Is that like
also
a
very
stone?
interesting person.
Yeah.
Yes. He's also, a cancer survivor and got a lot of.
When is he coming on your show? Monday?
Maybe I haven't decided if next week's schedule, as far as if I don't know if he was available for that one.
Bring him on our show, and we
Yeah.
can do readings like
Yeah.
we did. Remember that one we did? Trish, were you there when we did all the readings?
No, she wasn't.
Oh, we did one night. It was like one reading out. We did. People would come on. We'd post a link in the chat, and they would come on. We were busy the whole night.
Yeah, we were.
It was fun.
Yeah.
That'd be fun,
Oh,
yeah, because I want to talk to him more about his cancer story, and surviving that. But
Yeah,
he could do readings on.
yeah, we can bring
That's
him
it.
on.
Oh, real quick, Trish, tell everybody about your new show.
Yeah,
Oh,
we did it. Yeah,
so very new. Last night was the first episode, The Missing Piece.
It was good.
And I'm kind of going in a weird. I intuitively am drawn to certain people and certain stories, and that's who I'm going to be having on my show. So
What's the name of your show?
The Missing Piece.
Missing Piece.
The Missing Piece. Monday
to find-
nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central.
8 Central. Yes.
And into the night on Tuesday
Yeah.
nights at 11 Eastern. Yeah.
I'm good.
You are. You're good. That was a fun show tonight.
Yes,
Well,
it was.
we're coming to the end of this show.
Yep.
And thank you all for joining us on Chasing Prophecy, where we discuss anything and everything beyond the scope of normal. We'll see you next
Nighters.
week. Yeah.
Good
Good
night.
night.
I gotta find her. And he said he brought it out.
Oh, you
Okay.
moved it.
He
I
moved
moved
it.
it up for you.
We'll have to find it. I'm looking. I don't know. Guys,
Find it. I like the ending too.
Yeah, if I can find it. Oh, I don't see it anywhere. Oh geez. Where is it? Into the Night, Chasing
That's mine.
Prophecy. I don't see it anywhere. Countdown.